If I told you there once lived a man so cruel, so relentless, that even the devil himself would hesitate before him, would you believe me? A prince who turned vengeance into an art form and fear into his deadliest weapon. His name still echoes through the darkest corners of history, Vlad, the Impaler. What you are about to hear is not just a tale of blood and death. It is the story of the most merciless revenge of the Middle Ages. Vlad was born in 1431 in Transylvania, at a time when the world was drowning in war, betrayal, and invasion. His father, Vlad II Dracul, was part of the Order of the Dragon, a brotherhood sworn to defend Christianity against the Ottoman Turks. But to young Vlad, this inheritance did not mean honor or glory. It meant blood, pain, and fear. He grew up inside cold castles, walking down damp corridors where whispers of betrayal were constant. From the very beginning, he learned a lesson that would stay with him forever. Trust was a luxury far too costly to afford. As a teenager, he and his younger brother were taken as hostages to the Ottoman Empire. This was common practice, political prisoners held as guarantees of loyalty. But what Vlad endured in captivity left scars that never healed. He saw cruelty, torture, and humiliation firsthand. He learned about the power of fear, the precision of psychological warfare, and the cold efficiency of pain. While his brother adapted, making peace with their captors, Vlad's heart hardened. Inside him, a fire grew brighter every day, the fire of vengeance. When he finally returned to his homeland, he found it broken. His father murdered, his throne usurped, his land riddled with treachery and corruption. For a man shaped by hatred, diplomacy was out of the question. Vlad would not rule through kindness or persuasion. He would rule through terror, and it was then that he perfected the method that would forever define his name: impalement. Impalement was not merely execution. It was a message carved into the minds of all who witnessed it. Corpses raised high on stakes along the roadsides, swaying in the wind, rotting beneath the sun, their lifeless eyes staring into eternity. Travelers would gag on the stench long before they saw the sight. It was horror designed not just to kill, but to linger in the imagination of the living. Vlad knew that fear outlived flesh. There is a story that during a rebellion, Vlad captured an entire town, men, women, even children. He ordered them all impaled. Thousands of bodies stretched for miles, forming what came to be known as a forest of the impaled. Imagine it, an endless horizon of sharpened stakes, each one crowned with the broken body of someone who dared to resist. It was not just brutality. It was theater, and its audience was the entire world. When the Ottomans launched their invasions, expecting to meet swords and arrows, they encountered something far more devastating: a battlefield already conquered by fear. The soldiers of Mehmet II, the conqueror of Constantinople, advanced into Wallachia only to stumble upon 20,000 corpses impaled and rotting. The smell was unbearable, the sight impossible to forget. Ardent warriors dropped their weapons, deserted their units, and wept like children. The Sultan himself, a man who had taken the greatest city of Christendom, recoiled before the spectacle of Vlad's vengeance. And yet, here lies the cruelest paradox. For the peasants of Wallachia, Vlad was not always a monster. To many, he was a savior. He punished thieves and corrupt nobles with ruthless efficiency. He brought order to a land drowning in chaos. It is said that under his rule, a golden chalice could be left unguarded in the town square, and no one dared to steal it. His justice was not merciful, but it was absolute. And in an age of treachery, absolute rule was a kind of salvation. Still, Vlad's vengeance reached beyond invaders and nobles. In one notorious tale, he discovered that merchants from Targoviste had cheated the people with unfair prices. His response was swift. They were all impaled. In his eyes, greed was treason, and treason could not be tolerated. The message was clear: wealth and power would not shield anyone from his wrath. There was also the infamous Banquet of Death. Vlad invited hundreds of noblemen to a lavish feast. The tables overflowed with food, the wine flowed freely, and laughter echoed in the great hall. But as the nobles drank, Vlad's soldiers stormed in. One by one, the guests were dragged outside and impaled. Vlad suspected their betrayal, and so he ended the threat in a single night. The banquet ended not in music, but in screams. The walls that once echoed with celebration now dripped with blood. Even his allies lived in constant fear. One day, a woman complained about her poverty and the hardship of feeding her children. Vlad's response was merciless. He killed her instantly, but ensured her family was cared for by the state. In his twisted logic, compassion was weakness, but order was everything. His justice was cold, brutal, and absolute. The siege of 1462 was the pinnacle of his legend. Mehmet II marched with an army of over 100,000 men to destroy Vlad once and for all. But as the Ottomans advanced, they entered a nightmare. On the roadside, they found tens of thousands of stakes. 20,000 corpses lined the path into Wallachia, forming what chroniclers called the Forest of the Impaled. Imagine the silence of that march, broken only by the crows tearing at flesh, the stench so thick it clung to their lungs. This was not war, it was psychological annihilation. Vlad fought with ferocity, even launching night raids into the Ottoman camp, disguised in enemy armor, spreading terror with every strike. Though he was vastly outnumbered, his sheer brutality shook the largest empire in the world. Even the Sultan, hardened by conquest, could not break him fully. It was not victory by sword, but by fear that Vlad achieved immortality. But vengeance cuts both ways. Vlad's reign was short, consumed by betrayal. His own allies, perhaps tired of living in terror, turned against him. He was captured, imprisoned, and eventually killed. Some say he was beheaded, his head sent to the Sultan in Istanbul, displayed on a stake as a trophy. Others claim his body vanished, his tomb empty. Legends whisper that his soul never left this world, that he still walks the forests of Romania, watching, waiting, feeding the myth that would one day inspire Count Dracula. And yet, the legacy of Vlad the Impaler is not so easily defined. Was he a tyrant who bathed his land in blood, or a ruler who brought order to chaos through terror alone? Was he a monster, or was he the only man ruthless enough to resist the tide of an empire? History cannot decide, and maybe that's the point. His story survives not because of what he was, but because of what he represents, the thin line between justice and cruelty, savior and monster, man and myth. Even today, in some villages of Romania, his name is not spoken aloud, not out of respect, but out of fear. As if centuries later, his vengeance might still reach out from the shadows. Do you believe a man can truly turn fear into his greatest weapon? If this story left you in shock, share it with someone who needs to know the truth behind Vlad the Impaler. And subscribe, but only if you have the courage to hear the stories that history tried to silence.